Welcome to Bourbon Broken Windows, a podcast where we talk about the world of country music, and we're not talking about radio country. If you like fancy like, you're in the wrong place. We're here to give you our hot takes and stupid opinions on country music, both old and new. My name is Tad, and I'm joined by two other country music fans.
I'm Jack. I was born in the state of North Carolina, but I grew up and currently live in Ohio.
And I'm Thomas. I'm from Western Ohio. I'm pretty much here for good times and hot takes. So that's about it.
So just to give you guys a little purpose and vision behind the podcast and what we were thinking when we came up with this idea, our goal here is to lead you, the listeners, to country artists that matter, both new and old artists. We're going to be breaking down songs, giving you guys artists of the week, things like that. And just a little bit of a backstory behind the name of this podcast, Bourbon and Broken Windows.
Well, I mean, pretty self-explanatory for the bourbon side. We just like to drink and have fun and talk about country music. It's one of our best features, I would say. And then I think in terms of the Broken Windows side, well, it just... Broken Window Serenade by Whiskey Myers was one of those songs that I know for not just myself, but for you guys was, one of those door openers that kind of led us to where we are today and where you guys specifically kind of started listening to this type of country music, real country music, in my opinion. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely songs like Broken Window Serenade, Stone and Whiskey Myers. That whole band kind of led us down a different path. We listened to country music, whatever's on the radio at the time, and then we kind of took that turn to what we consider to be really good country, more meaningful music.
Absolutely. And Broken Window Serenade is still to this day probably my favorite song by Whiskey Myers. And, the other meaning behind Broken Window is we all agree that Nashville is mostly just a broken window of country music right now. And we're here to hopefully point you guys, the listeners, in the right direction. So going off of that, I mean, Thomas, who do you think are kind of the key players in the country music scene right now?
I mean, I think there's, right now, there's quite a few key players. But when you're talking about key players that seem to be opening up, that are starting to bring their sound and that red dirt sound to the mainstream country kind of music that we're hearing today, but are completely different, I think, is definitely Zach Bryan, Tyler Childers, and Colter Wall. And like I said, and as much as I hate to say this, but TikTok, I think, was pretty huge for Tyler Childers and Zach Bryan because, those snippets at the beginning of their songs, like Heading South for Zach Bryan, I know, and then Tyler Childers' other songs, it kind of brought it to an audience that wouldn't necessarily hear it in the first place. They would never go out and search to find it, and it would never be, you wouldn't necessarily hear those songs on country radio that you hear today, unless you're, down in Texas or something. But that's not what we're hearing today, and we're hearing more, I don't know, not good stuff. But I mean, what do you think, Tad? I mean, who's your key players for you specifically that you think is just like that's what brought it home? That's what set it in place to what it is turning into today. I mean, what do you think?
I had two that came to mind that were the same as yours, and that was Zach Bryan and Colter Wall. And you kind of already touched on it, but with Zach Bryan, he's got his feet in different worlds right now. He's in the TikTok world. He's got a couple songs on the radio. But at the end of the day, Zach Bryan kind of always stays true to himself. He makes the music that he wants. And, if he's going to continue to get popular like he has over the last few months and years, that's a good quality to have in kind of the Nashville, radio country world. But Colter Wall as well, he brings this kind of older outlaw kind of sound back. And, he's living the cowboy life for sure. If you don't know, he's a rancher in Saskatchewan. And, that sort of authenticity in music can be kind of hard to find. So I think that's a good quality. And another one I'd have to say is probably Charles Wesley Godwin. He's done some touring with Zach Bryan. I've gotten to see him at least one time as an opener for Zach Bryan. But just his storytelling ability is fantastic. And he brings some of those Appalachian sounds that you maybe find it in bluegrass or that world of country, kind of a more mainstream, if you haven't listened to the album Seneca. every single song on there is a story, and every single one of those songs are fantastic. And so I think those kind of qualities are good in somebody who's becoming more popular and will have a good influence on the country world.
Yeah, for sure.
Just really quick, going back to your point about TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. I don't think that TikTok is doing a lot of good things for our generation right now. I think the good thing about it is bringing certain artists to a different audience, like Zach Bryan or Tyler Childers. I think Feathered Indians and Oklahoma Smoke Show are two songs that really went viral on TikTok recently. So I think it's good in that sense, but I think that it's not good in the sense that most people who are on TikTok listening to that or watching a video with a snippet of that song are not going to do a deeper dive and fully transition to this type of country music.
You don't think so? You don't think that's what kind of made it more, I wouldn't say available, but kind of opened up to more people? I feel like some people would hear maybe the beginning of that song and be like, oh, I really like that, and then kind of not necessarily do a deep dive, but listen to that song in particular to hear the whole thing, and then just kind of get exposed to all these other artists. I mean, I think it helps to an extent. It's got to. I would think so.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you on that. Like I said, it's good that it's exposing these artists to a different audience. I just think I think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I mean, but in my opinion, like, you wouldn't hear. I don't think if he would have been as big on TikTok than any other platform, I don't think we would have ever heard him on the radio. Something in the Orange was the first song that I heard by a country singer like this, like Zach Bryan or Tyler Childers. That was one of the first songs that I've ever heard on the radio. That was actually not the typical poppy,
Sure.
Today Nashville that we hear most of the time.
Right.
That was like the first song that actually came out onto the radio, and I was like, okay, that's one of the good ones. You know what I mean? And I feel like if people really care about country music and what kind of country music they listen to, I feel like that's a door opener. I think that just opens the gates to whoever wants to go. I mean, listen to that type of music.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing that these artists are getting exposure on TikTok. If it was, somebody else, if it wasn't Zach Bryan or Tyler Childers, I would say it's a bad thing, because Zach Bryan and Tyler Childers are not going to change because of popularity.
No.
They're going to make the music they want to make.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's why that's important in that context. So they're using, the TikTok platform. I guess they're not using it, but they became popular through that platform. Their music is getting spread around, but it's not going to change the music itself. It's just going to spread that music to other people. So I would say it's a good thing, but if we have other artists that really get involved with TikTok.
Right.
Like Bailey Zimmerman.
Yeah, I was going to say, which I think that's a great example, because just because it's on there doesn't mean they're going to change their ways to keep getting on there, because I don't think that was ever their intended purpose to be like, oh, I want to get on TikTok. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it just exposes more people to that sound.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, going back to just the general key players idea, I think we realized before we sat down and started recording this that we essentially had the same artists on our list here. And for me, Zach Bryan, he says that he doesn't want to be put into a genre box. You could certainly call his music country. You could call his music a lot of things. But I think that's part of what makes him unique right now as well. And then Tyler Childers, we've seen with his most recent album, he's really reinventing himself. He's gotten sober. He's going back to his roots. And I think that's really shining through in his music. And so I think for those reasons, that's why I had Zach and Tyler on my list, for those reasons specifically. And then Colter Wall is just incredible. Like Tad said, he's from Saskatchewan. He's comes from a ranching community, and he's been heavily, heavily influenced by Appalachian sounds and songs. And you can really see that in his music. So I guess going off of that, what are your guys' kind of favorite lines or lyrics from a specific song right now?
Well, I'm not so much. I mean, I listen to obviously the new, red dirt type country, but I'm more leaning towards old country. Like that's kind of my thing, my bread and butter, I guess, because I grew up listening to it. So like, I guess one of my favorite songs is Silver Stallion by the Highwaymen. And that kind of, a lot of the country songs that I listen to, they're all kind of slower, more, I wouldn't say dark country songs, but like kind of depressed in a sense. I don't know, like slow, sad country songs, I guess. That's probably the best.
Absolutely.
And so like in Silver Stallion, when he says, ride like a one-eyed jack of diamonds with the devil close behind, it just seems like those words just, it's like you're always fighting that demon that's just, it's on your shoulder. He's always behind you. He's chasing you nonstop. Like, I think that's one line that I think really hits hard for me. That, it's that ongoing struggle, that ongoing kind of sadness that I would think hits a lot of people. When you're alone, you're driving your car, it's nice to just kind of slow down and listen to some nice dark, and listen to the story behind it. And that's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
It's lines like that just kind of give you that ongoing feeling of kind of your demons are just always chasing you.
I think we could sit here for hours and talk about Waylon Jennings and Johnny Cash and the Highwaymen and Chris Christopherson. And that might be a topic for a later episode, but yeah, that's awesome.
For me, one of my things, I love to find new country music. And I think I bother a lot of people with the amount of obscure country songs I will find. But one of the artists that I could find a while back was Taylor McCall. And one of his songs has been on repeat recently, and the song is called Quartermaster. And, there's not really a specific line per se in the song that I like, rather than the entire thing as a whole. But he's talking about this quartermaster of the past, and the song talks about a woman that used to be in his life who is no longer in it, and talking about kind of those haunting feelings, being the quartermaster of your past. And Taylor McCall's songwriting is fantastic. So if that's somebody you haven't heard before, it's definitely somebody you want to take a deep dive into.
Absolutely. I think what makes a song so great like Quartermaster is you're taking a subject like heartbreak or previous relationships, but you're taking it to a more deeper, complex level, and you're crafting your lyrics in a way that have multiple meanings and really makes the listener think about what the artist is trying to convey in that song. And I think Taylor McCall captures that.
For sure.
Well, and not even that, I would say that that's also an experience or in a level that most people can relate to. Everybody's gone through a breakup. Everybody's gone through losing someone that, it's kind of like the one that got away, and it's just always kind of been in the back of your mind, always kind of haunted you. I mean, Quartermaster, a song like that is it's something that everybody can relate to, and it kind of puts you in your feels a little bit. It kind of takes you down a little bit, which is something that I like. With my songs, I like that feeling. It's something I think a lot of people can relate to personally. I don't know.
Definitely. I would say I definitely gravitate more towards sad songs, but a song that's been on repeat for me recently is Strong by Charles Wesley Godwin. And I think you can say a lot about him right now and where he's at in the country music scene, touring with Zach Bryan and everything, but his song Strong is actually a positive song. And my favorite line from that song is, "Every miss is a payment made to a debt of dues that we all must pay." And I think what he's trying to say here is that, your failures are not for nothing. And if you try to do something and you fail, it's not written off completely. This is a fact of life. It's something that everybody goes through no matter what. It's a debt of dues that we all must pay. And just being happy with that and comfortable, I think says a lot.
Yeah, and I think a line like that can be interpreted in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people can relate that to their own lives and, have their own thoughts and feelings about the way that makes them feel or what they can relate that to. It's just such a good universal line that can just go on for freaking anything, in my opinion. There's so much volume there that you can just take and break down and, incorporate it into your experiences, your past experiences, what you've been through, I did. That's a great. I mean, it is a great line, and I think there's so many songs out there that it was really hard for me to pick like a line that I really thought was good because there's so many good lines out there, especially when you got people like Zach Bryan and Tyler Childers, that, especially Colter Wall. They tell such a good storyline that you can really relate to. Like, there's so many good, and there's such good storytellers. Like, there's so much out there that you can hear that it's so good. You just gotta find it, and once you find that little like thing, it's for me it's game over. Personally, it's game over.
That's the sign of a good storyteller. When you can write a story where anybody can interpret their own meaning from it. You know, a lot of songs today, they're not very good at maybe, you know, conveying their thoughts. So they're gonna kind of tell you, you know, what the moral of this song is. When you have a good storyteller like Colter Wall or Charles Wesley Godwin, you have to kind of infer on your own. And, you know, what I think about the song is not going to be, you know, what you think, Thomas, or you think, Jack.
Exactly.
I think that's a really good quality to have, and not one that we see very often.
And I think that's one of those things that make a good country song, too.
For sure.
Like, for me, you know, a good country song tells a good story.
Oh, absolutely.
And it doesn't, I mean, most country songs that I like, it's a timeline in a sense, I think, most of the time, but they tell a good story. And you actually have to slow down. You got to listen to what they're saying and feel what they're saying. And then, you know, the music on top of it plays a huge role, I think, in my opinion. Like, for a good country song, like, one of the big things for me is, like, steel guitar. If there's a steel guitar, a fiddle, or even a harmonica, especially when there's a good solo, after you hear part of the story, and there's a good solo, and then it continues on, it kind of gives you time to think about it. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
It gives you time to kind of process it with a good tune to go along with it. And I think that's one of my biggest things when you're talking about a good country song is a good storyline and good music instruments that go along with it. That kind of can set that tone. I mean, hands down, I think the music itself, the music instruments itself sets a huge tone. You know, like Glenn Campbell's song, for instance, Wichita Lineman, there's a good, deep, dark guitar in there that just kind of, it gives you this feeling, but it also gives you that time to process what's being said in the song and process the story. And like I said, it kind of gives you time to relate it to yourself and put it down into a different depth, I guess, per se, that you kind of want it to be at, or that you're looking to be at. I mean, what for you, Jack? What for you makes a good country song? Like, what do you think embodies a good country song?
At the core of country music, they're all telling a story. It's usually a story of struggle or some kind of hardship.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about kind of sad songs earlier, and you know, sad songs honestly make the best songs. You know, they invoke the most emotion.
Yeah, for sure.
So the storytelling, you're right, is a very crucial part of what a country song is.
Which I don't think we see, like, today's, you could call it Nashville country, I guess, but you know, the songs that you hear on the radio, like, for instance, I'm going to go back to Fancy Like, that song makes me want to jump off a bridge. I'm just going to say that. It is well, you know, the story, it is a story, don't get me wrong, and it's, you know, it's got good intentions, but the way it's delivered, just the words of it just kind of make me stir in my seat. Like when it comes on the radio, I kind of want to bust my radio out of my car. And I instantly change it.
I don't think you're the only one that shares that sentiment.
Yeah, no, it's... I don't like it. I'm not saying I don't like the artist. I think they do a great job. But that song, I don't consider... That's not a country song.
Right.
Why am I hearing it on country radio? I don't want to hear that.
That's not country, that's not Americana, that's not anything remotely that
No, it's
Applebee's.
Yeah. Just that word now when I hear that just makes me go insane because it's just not a good song.
Yeah. I think...
Especially it's not country.
Right. And I think you can pick out objective components to country music like twang and elements of folk, string instruments and so on, but I think it really just boils down to like I don't fucking know.
Well, Thomas, you talked about kind of the role of instruments. at least for my kind of personal definition of country music. That's definitely a part of it, and maybe I'm just a sucker for certain instruments. You know, you get some fiddle, some violin, you know, mandolin, banjo, steel guitar, things like that. Well, they don't automatically make a country song. You know, there's plenty of songs on the radio right now that they're using steel guitar left and right, and they're not that good. But I think they contribute to having a good country song. You know, those instruments, kind of the origins of country music, were these very simple instruments that really existed in like Appalachia. So having these instruments on your country song, I think is kind of crucial. And that's a general statement. You know, there are obviously exceptions to that, but in general, you know, you shouldn't have electronic bass beats, you know, in your song.
Right.
Like you hear on the radio. Yeah, it's.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing. Is like, if I hear a steel guitar, I'm intrigued as long as it's being delivered properly. But if I hear a steel guitar and it really just it's that break where it's just a steel guitar solo, and it's good. Sign me off. I'm done. That's what I'm looking for. Like, I'm probably gonna like it, unless it's delivered in a too poppy fashion. Like, if there's too much on top of it, there's too much going on. I'm looking for that slow, that quiet steel guitar just whining out sounds.
Yeah,
that's what I'm looking for.
It's the crying sound.
Yeah,
of that guitar.
I want to hear that. I want to hear that puppy whine and just set me free. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge part.
Definitely. And like, I think you can pick out objective components like twang and elements of folk and string instruments and so on, but at the end of the day, I know it when I hear it.
Well, that's the thing.
For sure.
You can have twang. Florida Georgia Line has twang.
Exactly.
There's undeniably twang, but if it's not delivered properly, it's not gonna get me. It's not gonna be something that I'm gonna keep listening to or want to listen to more of.
Yeah. I think it's fake twang.
It does sound like it. It really sounds like it.
Yeah, because they're trying to sell that countryside when that, in my opinion, it's not country music.
Right.
They're trying to sell it as country because they're typically played on a country radio, but it ain't it.
On a completely separate note, if you're from a state such as West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Western Virginia, Northern Georgia, somewhere in the Appalachia region, please rip Tad apart for his pronunciation of Appalachia.
Well, here's the thing, and I use them so interchangeably. Like, honestly, I don't know, because hearing different people say it differently. I remember once, we were in the car driving through probably the mountains of West Virginia, and I said one of the pronunciations. My mom ripped me apart for saying it the wrong way, because she grew up in Southern Ohio, and at this point, I honestly couldn't tell you which pronunciation it was. I hear both of them so much, and I don't even know which one's right at this point.
Well,
I think it's Appalachia. Appalachia.
I think for me, it's just whatever comes out of my mouth at that time.
I mean, people know what I mean, and I'm sure people who live there will say you're stupid. Don't say that ever again. But my intentions are good. Just know that.
Yeah. Well, even at that.
Fair enough, I guess.
For someone like me who's a little bit more intellectually impaired, I'm kind of just going to say whatever I think, and I'm really not going to care what you think.
Right.
Like, if I say something wrong, do I apologize? Not really. I'm just going to say it. Okay? I'm going to say it. However it comes out, that's what I'm rolling with, all right?
Right.
It's just the way it's going to be.
Right. So, I guess, why don't we talk a little bit about how we became country music fans? Were you guys always country music fans? Is there a certain shift or a certain point you can identify where you started listening to more country music? I guess.
Oh, for me,
Thomas.
So like I said, I grew up in Western Ohio and we had a small little family farm. We had a couple horses and we raised pigs and chickens and stuff like that. And then my grandparents had a family farm. I'm from a very rural area, so it's a very large farming community. So for country music, like, I've always listened to country music. That's never been out of the area that I listen to. Like, that's just, I grew up listening to country music. And, today's country music is a lot different than what I used to listen to, or like what I used to hear growing up. And that's why I'm like, I've always been a country fan, but I don't like the country that I'm hearing on the radio today. And for me, I don't like that. That needs to change, in my opinion. So like I said, I've always grown up on country music, always been a part of my lifestyle, part of my life. I've never not listened to country music, I guess, if that makes sense.
My love for country music definitely came later in life, and it was probably about the time I started college. That time people, you really start to find yourself. You're out on your own, and there was something there where I really, really started enjoying country music. And at that time it was whatever was on the radio for me. I think at the time it was a lot of Luke Combs stuff, and I did like it, but over time I just kind of started to hear, a song here or there that was maybe a little bit less mainstream. We kind of talked about in the beginning, like Broken Window Serenade for you, Jack, was one, and for me it was Stone by Whiskey Myers. Mm-hmm. Hearing that that song kind of sent me down that path. And from there, I discovered Whiskey Myers. I discovered a lot of those newer kind of red dirt artists, that would lead me to Tyler Childers, Turnpike. Mm-hmm. So it's not the same as Thomas, where, he grew up with it. Mine definitely came later. But, it's hard to even think of a time when I didn't listen to country music, because I just have such an appreciation for it now. It's hard to imagine what it was like before.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing, too. It's like, I've always listened to country music, but now I really appreciate good country music.
Because it can be hard to come by.
It is. I mean,
it's not the same as it used to be.
It's not what it used to be. In early 2000s, country music was good. And that was really tipping the edge of whether or not it was even country music. I mean, I love it just because I grew up on it.
Right.
The early 2000s country music was good stuff. But, for other people, that might not be the case. I don't know. What about you? I mean, what made you say, oh, I'm going to start listening to country music?
Yeah, so I grew up on classic rock, 80s, 90s rock, and then modern alternative alt rock bands. And something definitely shifted when I got older, just like Tad said. Right around 2018, 2019, that kind of time period, I went to visit one of my friends who lived in South Carolina at the time. And he was a big country music fan, and he started playing songs. I specifically remember a lot of Luke Combs. I specifically remember In Color by Jamie Johnson, and I was just immediately hooked on the storytelling aspect of the songs and the melodies that made what country music is. And then I started going back to older artists, the kings of country, George Strait, Alan Jackson, Hank Jr., all those big names. Started listening to them, developed a newfound appreciation for kind of that classic 80s, 90s country sound. And then I went back to newer artists. Like I said, Broken Window Serenade by Whiskey Myers was probably one of the first songs that turned me on to kind of this red dirt, Americana type sound. And Feathered Indians by Tyler Childers was another one. And it just grew from there, and I started going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole.
You know what it was for me? For
What's that?
This specific red dirt type country was it was me, you, and a buddy driving around in his Mustang in the middle of the night, out just to wherever the road took us. And I remember hearing the music, and I was like, I like the older stuff. And I was like, this is kind of just different country. I'm not really, to be honest, I wasn't a fan of it at first. And then I really started listening to it. Really started listening to the stories and the way it was presented, and just this is going to sound weird, but there's the vocabulary that they use, like the words that they use, it was incredible. And I just remember that was one of the times where I really kind of made a huge change to this specific type of country. Like I said, I've always listened to country, but driving around in the middle of the night, and I mean, we weren't even saying nothing. Do you remember? I mean,
oh yeah,
we were just driving around listening to music, and this was that type of music that kind of set that tone.
Absolutely,
kind of set that feeling, and it was great. And I haven't looked back since.
Yeah,
at least me and Jack kind of found country, a bit later in our lives. What do you say to someone who just says outright they don't like country? They'll listen to anything but country. That's a pretty common thing.
Yeah, it's really common. I think it's annoying I think they're dumb, personally. I mean, what they need to do is they just need to listen to the actual story. And obviously, and they're not listening to the right country. If they don't like country music, it's because they're not listening to the right country.
It's the stuff they heard on the radio.
Right, it's the stuff that's on the radio.
Like.
They're listening to the stuff on the radio like Fancy Like Applebee's, and that song just drives me up a wall. Yeah, if you hear that song and you think that's country music, I would hate country music if I thought that was country music.
Yeah.
So they have a point, but they also maybe they just need to be exposed to real country music. I mean, and some people they just don't get down with that. So that's that's their own personal opinion. It is what it is. But I think the biggest thing is it might even be with their friends. Like I know there's some songs that I listen to by myself that I don't share with people. Like I'm sure people don't listen to I don't listen to my country because my friends don't listen to country, and I don't want them to think that I'm weird because I listen to country music, especially here in Columbus.
Yeah.
It's a lot of city kids. I hear that a lot around here, I guess is what I'm saying. But I think you really need to take the time to slow down and listen to what's being said. And listen to the good music. I mean, it's a good slow down music. And some people they truly might just not be looking for that. Maybe they're looking for high paced stuff. And I know I listen to slower country, that's what I like. So for people to say, I don't listen to country music and I never will, you ain't listening to the right country music. So you really just need to listen.
I say the same thing to everybody who says this, and I probably drive them crazy because they know I like country music and that they know I'm that annoying guy that's going to talk about it. But I always say the same thing: don't listen to radio country. That's your perception of it, and that's not the good stuff. And I get in the same four artists every time: Tyler Childers, Whiskey Myers, Zach Bryan, and Turnpike Troubadours. These four were probably the first introduction for me into like the newer country world.
Yeah.
And I think there's something in there for everybody. Every one of those is a bit different, Tyler's music is definitely different than Whiskey Myers, where Whiskey Myers is more of a rock. They would probably call themselves more of a rock band than country. Right. And then Zach Bryan, the singer-songwriter, he focuses on lyrics. A lot of his songs are not too musically complicated, but that's not the point. It's just more for the songwriting. And then, Turnpike is just kind of great across the board. I don't really know what to say about that other than they're awesome.
Right.
Turnpike is a classic.
Well, that's the thing about country music is, it used to be country music, country western, the Highwaymen, Chris Christopherson, Johnny Cash, the basics. And now, compared that to the country music we hear on the radio, there's so many different types of country music out there that I think there really is country music out there for somebody. Like everybody can have their own personal way of how they want to hear country, and they can find it out there.
We could spend a whole episode talking about the subgenres.
Oh, I could go on for days. There's so many good artists out there, and there's so many good songs and good music that it's people like that just kind of they just need to be exposed to it more. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be one of these people. If you were to ask me, I don't know, 8 years ago, what kind of music I listened to, I would have said something along the lines of, a lot of rock, a lot of alternative, and especially anything but country. And I used to say that because the only country that I had ever heard was the country that was being produced out of Nashville and played on the radio. And so that's why I think when Tad says, don't listen to radio country, that's probably the best piece of advice that we can give people.
Yeah.
Because it's true, because I've lived it.
And we grew up in the borough country era, kind of.
Yeah.
So it's harder for people our age to have that appreciation when kind of during their formative years when they're developing a taste in music, that kind of stuff was on the radio.
Right.
It hasn't gotten better since then, but that era of country music did not help.
Yeah, no, I think it led a lot of people away from it. I mean, certainly it did. That's why people don't listen to country music now, because it's not good country music. It's not even... If you can hear a song that's played on the country music radio, and you can turn around and go to a pop radio station, and they're playing the same song, for instance, Applebee's, or whatever it's called, that's not good. That is not a country song. That is not country music. And when you can relate so many songs to that, I think it's just proof in the pudding, in my opinion.
So, proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. But you never heard that before?
No, I have.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know,
I just thought it was funny.
we've kind of been trashing radio country a lot, and you know, you're going to hear that a lot from us. Kind of the distaste we have for that sort of country. Not the people so much, but just some of the songs. But,
Right. I want to make it very clear, we're criticizing the music and not the people.
And one of the things we want to do to kind of mitigate that is, you know, introduce new songs to you that you may not have heard. Maybe if you've only heard, you know, one song by a certain artist, we want to kind of expose you to the artist as a whole. So, you know, with each episode of this podcast, we want to introduce to you a new song. And this week we have a song by Sapp, and it's called The Boys We Were.
Balanced on a bar stool, slamming Xanax down with beer, struggling not to argue with the demon in his ear. That friend told him with a crooked grin,
I need your help tonight. You just give me a hand, we'll make 8 grand.
So, what were your guys' first thoughts on the song?
I loved it. I went insane when Colter Wall came out of the blue.
I watched you listen to this, and you had a moment.
the echoing in it's such a different thing I've never heard before. Never heard something quite like that. And there's so many different thoughts and feelings you can have about the song, but the way they deliver it just blew me out of the water. I mean, it was awesome. I can't even explain it, but it was just so cool. And I want to hear more songs like this.
Yeah.
This is like, and this is completely different country, in a sense, to what I really like, which is, you know, Willie and Waylon and those, you know, Merle and all those guys. But it's completely different, but yet it's so good. And like I said, the filtering, like the kind of echoing sound that came through, and
It's haunting.
it is. It's like
It's
haunting.
haunting.
And it puts you kind of in a state of mind, honestly. If you're, you know, the way I take this... Okay, so for me, breaking down this song, I picture it as, like, he's sitting in a bar, drinking, and he says, oh, it was almost a good day, and now he's back into this sorrow, this depression, and then, you know, he's talking about how, you know, the devil is sitting on his shoulder, kind of stuff like that. And then you hear Colter Wall filter in, and it's just like, done. I am out of here. This was perfect. They delivered it. I mean, perfectly at the best time possible. And like that was for me, that was the defining moment. It was like, they got it. They hit that on the head. And that he hit it on the head was perfect. I thought it was amazing. I could go on for days about it. And I'm definitely going to be listening to that song at least 2 or 3 times a day now, just because it's so awesome. I love it. Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this goes back to the whole, what we said, what is country music, the whole storytelling point. And this is not only, can you imagine him sitting at a bar at one place in time, but he's singing about the past, present, and future, and what his feelings are about each one of those. You know, he says, I think about the boys we were when I could still quote scripture. And I think, you know, he's saying...
It's that, when you're a kid, it's different.
Yeah.
You know, there's that innocence. You know, he's talking about his brother. Think about when they were kids, you know. You don't know what people are going to turn out to be. And so you have these feelings of when you were younger and how it was different. And then he's, you know, like you said, past, present, and future. And now he's comparing that to what it's like now and what it's going to be like. And, you know, Thomas talked about, you know, the moment when Colter Wall comes in, that whole verse is kind of awesome. You know, you hear the demon in his ear is talking about, there's the line, the friend told with a crooked grin, I need your help tonight, which is where Colter Wall comes in. And the Colter Wall and Sapp trade off these lines. You know, you just give me a hand, you'll make 8 grand. But that's, you know, spoken by Colter Wall, and Sapp saying he's my brother, just decline. You know, Sapp is voice is good, and then Colter Wall is kind of the voice of bad. And Colter Wall ends it with for a time. You know, that final thought was an evil thought.
Right.
Well, and that's the thing. When Colter Wall comes in, he literally embodies the voice of the devil.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's deep.
It hits so hard. When you're listening to the story, it just hits so hard, and it's perfect.
And then from the point on, when Colter Wall is introduced, the rest of the song it's where life turns bad for his brother. You know, that's where
he's
it starts to
fighting
get the dark stuff. Yeah, and that's just such a cool moment to see the song turn like that.
And I think there's another meaning too with the whole line with the demon in his ear. I need your help tonight. You just give me a hand, you'll make $8,000. I think you could interpret that as selling your soul to the devil to become successful
Oh yeah,
and have
sense.
success in your life.
Absolutely.
I think that's a theme consistent throughout country music and has been for a very, very long time and still continues today.
Well, and that's the demon, that's the devil that we all fight every single day. You know what I mean? Like that. There's always a good on one shoulder and a bad on the other. Which one are you gonna fall? Which trap are you gonna fall into?
Right.
And like I said, he's having a good day, and then all of a sudden,
You hear the struggle, and he falls in the wrong direction.
Falls in the wrong direction again. It's just perfect.
Exactly. And the songwriting is just incredible. Lines like, and fate ain't always kind when your mouth is filled with fatal fangs, and there's poison in your mind. I mean,
That's a deep line.
Yeah.
That is a deep line. Like that is awesome.
yeah.
Well, if you haven't heard the song yet, we highly recommend you check it out, along with the rest of Wade Sapp's music. But our goal every week is going to be to introduce a song like this, a song we really like, and something you should check out. But that's all we have for our first episode of
Thanks for
Broken
listening.
Windows. We hope you'll listen again, and hope you'll tolerate more of our hot takes and stupid opinions.
They're gonna get hotter. Trust me.
They will. This one's
Absolutely.
pretty tame.
This was a very tame. We're still trying to figure it out, but it's gonna get good. So.
Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll see you soon.